So, subhanAllah, when you talk about like loneliness, and these periods of time where you're alone, I just it reminds me of many of the stories that were told in the Quran. And if you look at these stories, you'll find that there's an underlying theme that's sort of throughout all the stories, and that is that they all had periods of time where they were alone. They all had periods of time of loneliness, and that really teaches me, and I think it's a reminder to everyone that these are some of the phases of life, but they are temporary. And I think that the fact that everything in this life is temporary is both a cause of sadness, but also a cause of joy, because although when we say nothing in this life lasts, right? It's a reality of dunya, but it is both comforting and saddening at the same time, because it's saddening when you have good things and they don't last forever, right? But at the same time, it's also comforting because when things are hard, when you are lonely, when you are alone, when you're going through difficulty, when you're in pain, that also doesn't last. And it's like it's one of the sunan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of this in this dunya, is that nothing lasts, not pain, not loneliness. And so when you're going through that experience, I think number one is really holding tight to that concept that this is just temporary and this is just a phase in my journey, and that's a fact. And the other thing to look at is that the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most beloved people to Allah, also went through times of loneliness, and they also went through times of feeling isolated. And when you look at Maryam alayhi salam, I think that in Surah Maryam, when it talks about her pain, not just her physical pain when she was in labor, but her psychological and emotional pain. She was in so much pain that she said, "Oh, that I had died before this and was forgotten." I mean, we don't always talk about the pain that the prophets and those nearest to Allah went through. She was the most, she was the best woman, ever, created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She was one of the four perfect women, as the Prophet ﷺ explained. And yet she went through such isolation and such pain. When she was there giving birth, she was alone. And she knew what her people were going to do when they saw her with a child, and the pain that she went through alone, and the emotional pain that she went through in that moment, so much that she was saying, "Ya laytani mittu qabla hadha wa kuntu nasyan mansiya." Like, it's a very, very strong statement that I wish that I had died before this and I was forgotten. So we should never think that I don't know, that being religious means that your life's just going to be zen, and it's just going to be you're always going to be floating on clouds and hovering, and everything's going to be really you're always going to be serene, because that's not the case, and the people who are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala went through periods of pain, and went through periods of isolation, went through periods of loneliness, and they went through periods of sadness. When you look at Yaqub alayhi salam, where we know that he had so much grief when he lost his son Yusuf alayhi salam, and that we know that he lost his vision from his grief, from his crying, and he says إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله, that I complain about my suffering and sadness to God. So yeah, they went through difficulties, they went through pain, but I want to just kind of end with this, because this was something that struck me really, really hard this Ramadan, specifically when I was reading the Quran, and that was how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about healing the hearts of the believers. I was shocked at how much there was a discussion about that, because I think that we think that, if you're religious, then you're never going to feel bad stuff in your heart, but yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically says, for example, that the people of Jannah, he will remove the ghil from their hearts. Ghil is it's like anger. It's something that's not positive. It's the pain that we sometimes hold in our hearts because of being wronged, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically mentions that thing that's part of being in dunya, called ghil, it will be removed. وَنَزَعْنَا, it's almost like it actually be ripped out of the hearts of the believers. And then and in other places, Allah talks about healing the hearts of the believers. That after, because this life is hard, you know, and your heart goes through a lot. But just recognizing, I just think that it's like, it's very healing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acknowledges these trials, these psychological and emotional trials that we do go through and that believers go through. And that one of the rewards of Jannah is that that's washed out of the heart, that's removed from the heart. And the heart doesn't have that remnants of the pain from this life.